Patrol Officer Matt Hotzler from the Blue Earth Police Department is working midnight to 8. Dispatch calls him and says they've received a 911 call.
911 emergency. Hello?
That only contained heavy breathing.
Hello, where you at?
And then a hang-up.
At this moment, I wasn't worried. I'd been to 911 hang-up calls before. It was pretty common. I heard a noise that sounded like "help me." I've never heard a "help me" like this. It made the hair on my neck stand up.
It's not somebody screamed an hour ago. Somebody's screaming right now. You put a gun in your hand, and you go in there and find out what's happening.
I walked in. The main floor was completely empty. I'm standing in the living room. There was a young girl at the top of the stairs. She's got red hair, and she then asked me to come upstairs and help them. I see blood droplets going up the stairs and noticed that the red hair wasn't hair dye. It was actually blood. The girl walks into the bedroom to the left. I kind of froze. The bedroom just looked like a horror movie. Blood splatter on the walls. There was blood on the floor. There's a little girl sitting on, looked like a toddler bed mattress, watching cartoons. There was an adult female laying on her back in the bed, covered in blood. And on the right-hand side was an apparent deceased male with extensive head trauma to the point that you knew he was not alive. And then I saw a girl laying at the foot of the bed. And at that point, the adult female reached up and said, "Help my daughter, help my daughter." And while she was saying this, one of her eyeballs slid out of the socket down kind of on her cheek area. At that point, I felt like I was in a nightmare. I have never seen anything to this day that has come close to what I saw in that bedroom.
This is a horrific attack by someone who is absolutely out of control. He is wild. This is different. I spent my career closing murder cases. But I'm not the only one who answered the call. It takes a rare breed to solve the unsolvable, to catch a ruthless killer, to find justice for the dead. That's what it takes to be an American detective.
I'm Sheriff Mike Gormley with the Faribault County Sheriff's Office. When I got the call from our dispatch, I was at home sleeping. I got dressed and jumped in my truck and headed to the scene. We haven't had very many homicides in Faribault County. It was definitely a oh crap moment, and I wasn't sure what we were going to be dealing with.
I'm Tom Fletcher. I am the Chief of Police for the City of Blue Earth. When this happened, I just remember thinking, we have to preserve the crime scene, so everybody else was out, except for the body upstairs. When Sheriff Gormley showed up at the scene, we informed him of what happened.
They informed the sheriff that this entire family, with one exception, has been attacked in a savage way. One is dead, an adult male, 37 years of age, and his name is Christopher Fulmer. The surviving victims, at least at the moment, are his girlfriend, Candace Freeman, and her 3 children. 38-year-old Candace Freeman is near death at the hospital. A 15-year-old girl and her 19-year-old sister both have fractured skulls. There is also a 6-year-old girl found at the crime scene who is unhurt.
3 victims in there with life-threatening head injuries, and we didn't know they could very well die.
Before Candace passed out, she told the medical people that she had been attacked by someone wearing a black ski mask, and that she and Chris, her boyfriend, were both asleep when the attack began. Everyone's greatest fear.
We entered the house and we were just kind of going slow, just taking a look at, trying to see what we had, was taking some pictures. There was definitely blood down on the couches and on the floor as we worked our way around. We ended up going upstairs into the bedroom where the assault had happened. Before we entered the victim's bedroom, I had gotten information that the person had been bludgeoned, so in my mind I was already preparing to see that, but it was not enough. Saw the deceased laying there with his head that was very badly damaged. Looked like it was bludgeoned with something very heavy.
This is beyond the pale. His head is crushed nearly flat. How many blows would that take? A number. When you kill like this overkill, this savage attack, you don't see this as a criminal act. You see this as administering justice. You need to punish the victim, and you're having a wonderful time doing it.
I haven't seen these pictures in a long time. It's exactly as I remember it. It was so much blood. So much blood.
Next to the deceased victim is the blood-soaked pillow where Candace was sleeping.
You can see here is the little girl's bed. She was 6, and she was sleeping in their room at the time. There's blood on her bed even. Looks like a little handprint there of blood.
When the 2 adults were attacked, how much of that did she actually see? Hard to say.
We thought that this was something that was very cold. Who could do this to kids?
It's always the collateral damage that makes you the most upset sometimes, particularly when it involves a child. I've been there and done that, and it's just awful when you have a little human who is faced with how adults behave. And will always remember it, always be frightened by it.
Breaking into a house, trying to kill everyone in that house is someone not of a regular mindset. Why were the others injured as well, but not as badly? We didn't know.
So they go to the teenage girls' rooms to see if they were attacked in bed. There's no blood in that room, no anything. So the likely scenario is a 6-year-old, in total alarm, runs out of the master bedroom, goes to get her sisters to say there's something happening. They then come into the master bedroom and probably try to put a stop to it. Then they themselves are attacked and injured, but not as severely as the 2 in bed. Then the perpetrator leaves.
We weren't exactly sure what we were looking for a murder weapon, but we knew it was something of some weight.
Whatever it is, it's going to be covered in blood and brain tissue.
We had people looking just to try and see if we could find anything, but we did not find the murder weapon.
If he comes here with a weapon, his intention is to use it. And if he removes it, his intention is to perhaps use it again. Is he on his way to somebody else's house? Well, he could be. The worst thing about homicide investigation at the outset is not knowing. Where is he? What is he doing? That's a terrible feeling in your stomach. This person has to be found and neutralized.
When we stepped into the house, the crime scene was like a nightmare.
This has got to be the most horrific crime scene that I've ever seen.
That is a very frightening thing for the residents of Blue Earth, Minnesota. There is a killer in their midst who did a horrible thing to sleeping residents.
Neighbors living next door to where the homicide took place say they're still trying to come to terms with what happened.
It was very shocking, very tragic.
We were extremely surprised and a little scared when we found out what was exactly going on.
Middle of the night, somebody is killed in their bed. Yeah, that put a lot of people in panic mode. There was fear around town. Who was this and what's next? So we were definitely concerned. We'd already called for the BCA to come down and assist us with the crime scene and investigations.
My name is Michael Anderson, and I'm a special agent for the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which is the state crime bureau in Minnesota. And I remember meeting with Sheriff Gormley at the hospital to try to get an update and determine if we can get any more information from the victims about what had happened to them.
But they can't interview them yet. Candace Freeman is in a medically induced coma and may not survive. She has enormous contusions to the brain and multiple skull fractures. Her one eye was destroyed and had to be removed. The teenage girls have non-life-threatening injuries. They expect a full recovery, but they're still being treated.
We thought Chris was definitely the primary target by the amount of blows that he sustained. And our team did some investigating and looking into the background of our victim.
My name is Karen Cawthor. I am Christopher Fulmer's sister. This one right here brings up a lot of memories of him when he was younger. But yeah. Christopher was very smart, witty. He was very spunky, and he liked to joke around a lot. He would always try to cheer you up, make you smile, forget about your problems for a minute. He used to always make me laugh. We used to sit and play Monopoly for hours at a time, and video games, a lot of Nintendo. I think of all the good memories that we had, and at least I got to have him in my life for as long as I did. I received a phone call from my mom saying that Christopher was no longer with us, and I thought she was joking at first. And she said, no, it's the truth. And the hardest day of my life, really, so.
We did discover that he was previously married. He had a son.
At the time he was born, Christopher was so happy, over the moon, just, I haven't seen him smile so big in forever. He was really excited about it.
He now lives in Blue Earth, Minnesota, because his ex-wife moved there with their son.
He was just here for his son. It was all about his son.
A few months ago, he met Candace Freeman. They have hit it off, and they have become an item.
I know he really loved her. Just all around loved her personality and how caring she was and how good of a mom she was.
So we are concerned about Chris Fulmer's ex-wife, Mary. Ex-partners represent the closest and most emotionally connected person who may develop a real hatred for someone. Could it lead to violence? Without question. It often does.
We had learned that they did have a contentious past.
That's just controlling of my brother. He couldn't talk to people or go out or anything. They just didn't get along that well.
They fought all the time. They had terrible arguments, and the marriage just kind of fell apart.
He had fought for a really long time to get back into his son's life because For some reason, she just cut him out and wouldn't, like, let him see him at all.
Now that raises an eyebrow in both the chief and the sheriff. What if the emotions of that still linger in his ex-wife?
I've been involved in cases where we have had contentious custody battles that ultimately resulted in violence and even homicides.
What if Mary allows those emotions to come forward and they begin to eat at her?
The thought of his ex-wife having something to do with what happened to him did cross my mind. I just didn't know what to think at the time.
As far as, the type of perpetrator, it could have been male or it could have been female at that point. We didn't know. We just had Candy's description that it was someone in a mask. That's all we had.
One of the key things we do for investigating crimes is determine, do people have an alibi?
When they spoke with Mary, she says she was in another state and where she had been for some period of time. They said, who can confirm that? And she provided them with several names.
We looked into her story. Chris's ex-wife was not in town at the time.
So she's eliminated as a suspect. We need a new one, and we need a new one right now. We need to look at Candace Freeman, who was also savagely attacked. She is married. They are separated, but still legally man and wife. And his name is Brian Freeman.
Initially, you do look into exes or currents. We're not ruling anybody out.
So they want to speak to Brian Freeman. And lo and behold,
I was notified that Brian Freeman had arrived at the hospital.
He's in the waiting room. He's got his 6-year-old daughter with him because she's not hurt at all. Is he there as a caring spouse and father? Or is he there to learn more about the brutal damage he did to his own family? We are about to find out.
Brian seemed to be willing to talk to us. So we find a room that's not being used that we can do an interview with him in.
You can just tell me how you were notified of this incident and what you know.
I had a missed call on my phone, so I picked it up and I seen it was my daughter. I'm sorry, I'm a little shaky.
It's okay.
He appeared to be acting concerned. He was very nervous. But our first impression when Brian showed up was that he had just showered, and that was odd.
The fact that he took a shower before he came in was suspicious. I'm probably going there in my pajamas if I got out of bed. I'm not taking the time to take a shower.
Well, Brian, you can wash away blood, but you can't wash away guilt. So, someone murders Christopher Fulmer in the bloodiest way imaginable. And now Brian Freeman is showing up at the hospital, freshly showered. He doesn't prove anything, but it's awfully suspicious.
We asked him about his situation with Candace and why his family was staying with Chris Fulmer.
Brian says they've been together for 8 years, but they would fight and they would argue. They mutually apparently decided that it's time to move on. So Brian Freeman and Candace are going through a divorce, but it hasn't been completed.
What's been the status of your relationship as of late?
It's pretty good. We have our arguments.
What are they about?
Most of it's over money.
Okay. Not enough of it?
Yeah, pretty much not enough of it.
Okay. One of the things we look at in a situation like this is we try to alibi out anybody or could have a motive or anything like that or a connection to the people.
He said he had a fireman's dance. He was on the Ceylon Fire Department. He's a volunteer fireman. Ceylon is a small town. It's about a half hour away.
Who else would be some people that would have seen you there?
My fire chief, his wife, and members of my fire department.
After talking with Brian Freeman, they see nothing alarming about his demeanor. and nothing alarming about what he had to say.
I gave him my cell phone number and just told him, if anything comes up, just give us a call.
After speaking with Candace's estranged husband, investigators are even more anxious to get a first-hand account from someone who was there during the attack. Luckily, the doctors give them the go-ahead to speak to the two teenage daughters. They begin with the 15-year-old daughter.
I woke up to hear my older sister crying and yelling out my mom's name. And then when I got upstairs, I noticed my mom's friends and my mom and my sister's faces covered in blood. And then I blacked out and didn't wake up until I was in the hospital.
When the investigators question the eldest daughter, the 19-year-old, she gives a similar story. She said she was awakened by screaming. She ran into the room and saw a man wearing a ski mask was attacking her mother. She went toward him, and she was struck in the head and doesn't remember anything after that. But the investigators learn something interesting. Those girls independently report that they refer to Brian Freeman as Dad. He's been a loving father toward them, but he's actually their stepfather. It turns out that Candace was married once before to their biological father, Richard Messina.
We had learned that he had not had contact with his daughters since 2010. Candace had filed for an order for protection on him because of some allegations of abuse.
Is it possible that Richard Messina decides to attack this family? Humans are capable of any level of violence against any level of victim. If you don't believe that, then you better not be a homicide detective, because you're not going to do very well at it.
We did track down her ex-husband, and he was interviewed at the sheriff's office.
They say, well, Richard, what is the case between you and your ex-wife?
We got married in September 30th of 95 or 96. We were married 5 years. Just right at 6 years, we got our divorce. She tried claiming child abuse on me 3 times in a year. I got a lawyer and I proved her wrong. I did.
So, have you ever been charged?
No.
There was a contentious relationship there, but I don't feel like it was something that really stood out as like over the top. Like, oh my gosh, this guy's really angry.
He was abiding by the conditions of the OFP. He didn't want to violate that.
Where were you at yesterday?
Yesterday I was at Dawn's place. We didn't leave the house all day.
He had a girlfriend who lived in Dundas, and he was with her all that weekend. He didn't sneak down, take a 2-hour drive to Bloor, take a 2-hour drive back. So we ruled him out as a suspect because he had a rock-solid alibi.
Gormley and Fletcher are running out of leads. They head to the medical examiner's office to determine if perhaps the autopsy can reveal a clue.
When we got the autopsy results back, it showed that Chris had received 11 strikes to his head, causing cerebral damage and ultimately his death.
The type of weapon we were probably looking for, judging by the condition of his head, it was probably a flat handle, a sledgehammer, the back of an axe, something like that to make that chopping smash wound.
The other interesting thing about the autopsy, there are no defensive wounds on Mr. Fulmer. He is killed immediately. But that didn't matter. He doesn't want to just kill him, he wants to erase him. So after that discussion with the coroner, Fletcher returns to something he's been wondering about for some time. Who made the 911 call?
When Matt Hotzler was first dispatched, he was told that there was an open line and they weren't really sure what was going on at the residence.
I called dispatch and I said, hey, would you send me that 911 tape? Because as far as I knew, no one had listened to that 911 tape yet.
911 emergency. Hello?
The original 911 call, there was just kind of a blank air for a while.
Hello, where you at? Hello? Hello?
I remember the hair on my neck just standing up because it was a male's voice who comes on the telephone and he's panting hard. And he said,
There's been a murder.
There's what? Who's this? Can you give me the address?
And then the line goes silent and it's done. Because the dispatcher failed to listen to the male voice, that call got dispatched out incorrectly.
Fletcher realizes that's the killer. The only other male in that building is dead. Whoever killed him made the call.
Hello, can I help you?
The 911 call started out as a mystery, and now it's even more of one.
There's been a murder.
A killer reporting what he's just done. Is he trying to apologize? Is he trying to get medical treatment for these people? Why would the killer make that call?
We had at that time probably 2 BCA agents, the sheriff, and myself working on this. Everybody was out chasing something down.
We had people talking to neighbors, trying to see if they heard anything, saw anything.
We were unsuccessful with the neighbors. Given the time of night, everyone was in bed.
But they talked to Chris's landlord and asked him what he knew about the relationship between Chris and Candace. The investigators learned something interesting.
Chris Fulmer indicated he had been dating a woman who was married, and he was dealing with, I think the term he used was jealous husband issues. So that certainly didn't match up with what Brian Freeman was telling us. He said that the relationship was good and there was no issues or concerns with her spending, the weekend at Chris Fulmer's house.
So that sort of tripped some red flags for us. It wasn't all sunshine and roses like he sort of made it out to be.
Another piece of the puzzle falls into place when the investigators learn more about Candace's family. While her first husband, Richard Messina, is the father of her 2 teenage daughters, her 6-year-old had a different father, Brian Freeman.
The one person that's in the house that doesn't receive any injury and is not attacked in any way is his biological child.
So we were looking at that to try and put that together as far as, is he a possible suspect here? Agent Anderson and I, with that information, decided to go to take another chat with Brian at the hospital in Rochester.
So they start to ask him questions about his alibi of the night in question. And Mr. Freeman begins to be rather vague. He initially said he was at this volunteer fireman dinner in a town 45 minutes away. He suddenly doesn't remember what time it was over. He further adds that people were drinking heavily, and it's possible they wouldn't remember he was there.
He was very shaky and very nervous. It was raising our suspicion with Brian.
Before he left the hospital, I had asked if I could look in his vehicle.
He's somewhat reluctant, but he finally said, yeah, you can search it. The truck, of course, is a mess. A lot of junk and a lot of trash, but they find something that's very interesting indeed.
We were able to find a black ski mask. That was very concerning. The daughters said that the person in the house assaulting them was wearing a black ski mask. Brian said that he had those ski masks in his vehicle just because of work, and it's a possibility, but with the circumstances, that just didn't add up. After seeing that, we seized Brian's vehicle, and it was taken back to the sheriff's office and processed by the BCA crime lab.
Brian indicated he was going to go home. His mother was driving him around at that point, and so we had made a decision. We felt it was important to put some surveillance on him. And so I had made contact with one of my colleagues to kind of get in position at Mr. Freeman's house in Ceylon to watch what was going on there.
Eventually, we received a phone call from the agents watching Freeman's residence. They said they witnessed him carry out a black plastic bag and put it into a vehicle. Now, with the things that are going on with your family in the hospital, it was like, why are you taking trash out and putting it inside of a vehicle?
It's not just the trash. It's something he doesn't want the police to see.
At that point, Mike Anderson and I headed over to his house in Ceylon. I think he was a little surprised that we were there. You know, he talked to us again reluctantly. We decided to confront him about the black plastic bag the agents had witnessed him put in the vehicle.
And he said there's just some crap in it. And I said, well, can I take a look at it?
Brian opened up the bag and he pulled out a coat and held it up backwards to us so we could only observe the back. We thought that was a little strange, so we turned it around.
And I remember seeing on the jacket for sure what looked like possible blood stains to me.
Brian immediately says to them, I know what you're thinking, but that's not true. And why is that?
He indicated that he had worked at a hog rendering facility where they butcher or cut up hogs, and that could be pig blood basically on his clothing.
What Brian is saying is very interesting indeed. Do you know how they kill hogs in a slaughterhouse? They hit them over the head with a hammer. Mr. Freeman says that blood is from a slaughtered animal. Well, that might be true in his mind, but I don't think that blood is from a pig.
At that point, I can't let that evidence walk away, right? So I tell him, look, I'd like to take these clothing and have that tested, and if it turns out it's pig blood, that's great.
The BCA lab did a presumptive test to see if it was human or animal blood, and we were told later that it was human blood.
They don't have enough yet to make an arrest. They're close, and they know it. So they subpoena his phone records and read his texts.
What the text messages showed is that Candace and Brian had problems. He's concerned for his marriage in the text messages.
One of his messages, he stated, scared that you're going to leave and not come back. He was worried that Candace was going to leave him for Chris, and he was worried that his daughter was going to be moving away with them as well. We do have motive, definitely, with Brian showing that he was worried about Chris.
At this point, we need to have a more in-depth conversation with him about what his involvement may or may not be in this investigation.
I want to reiterate that you're not under arrest. We want to talk to you about a few things. I'm not going to lie to you, okay? I believe there's some problems with what you've told us. And what Mike and I are asking you to do is be honest with us.
And they start to show him the evidence they have against him, item by item by item.
That's where we pushed on harder, trying to get him to come clean with the real truth of what he did.
I was scared, that's why I didn't really say too much. I wasn't too sure what to say.
And that's when I tried to appeal to him as a firefighter.
Brian's a volunteer fireman in a small town in Martin County. Mike is a volunteer fireman in a small town in Faribault County.
Brian, I'm a fireman too. And
He seemed like the kind of guy that I wouldn't mind having behind me on the nozzle.
You don't want them to believe they're a cold-blooded killer. Make them believe that you are going to redeem them in some way.
We need to finish this right.
That's it. That's what got Brian to crack.
I honestly didn't go there to hurt anybody. It's one of them little close things.
So you got out of your car and picked up your war hammer by mistake?
How many times did you swing, do you think?
I'd have to take a guess at 2 or 3 times. I think maybe that's when Candace woke up and got caught in the crossfire.
And then the kids?
I'm thinking they may have come up the stairs, and then they got caught in the crossfire too.
He minimizes the violence. He reports half of it was an accident.
We have a male voice on the 911 call.
It is my voice on the 911 call because I wanted somebody to come and help.
It's certainly not a pure confession, but it will do nicely in combination with the remaining physical evidence.
What happened to that hammer? I tossed it out.
He had said he threw that out driving down the highway back to Ceylon and gave kind of an approximate area like near a bridge. We did later conduct some ground searches of that area, and we were able to recover the hammer on the ground in the ditch.
After talking with Brian Freeman, prosecutors and the investigators all believe they have a fairly clear picture of what really happened that night. They believe that Mr. Freeman had worked himself into a frenzy over the fact that his wife was actually going to leave him for another man. This caused him to become overwhelmed by the emotion of it all.
He parked at the house and sat there mustering up the courage to go up to the house.
He was getting more and more angry, I would suspect, the more time went on, before he finally reached the point where he decided to get out of his vehicle, walk down the street, and made entry into the house.
He walks into this room and he sees his wife is sleeping with another man with his 6-year-old daughter just a few feet away.
At that point, he was blinded with rage. He went over to Christopher's side of the bed and hit him repeatedly with the hammer. Now, he said he probably hit Chris 3 to 4 times. It was a lot more than 3 to 4 times.
He was swinging for the right field wall of Yankee Stadium every time, while his 6-year-old daughter that he loves so much is watching him from 3 feet away. What a lesson to provide your child with.
The evidence showed that after he was done hitting on Chris, he started hitting on Candace.
While this is underway, the 2 older girls come into the bedroom, try to stop him, and he beats them off of him with his hammer, knocking them down. Girls who called you their dad. You fractured their skulls, for God's sake, Brian. You did that. Nobody else, just you.
Approximately 4 days after the incident, Candace came out of her coma.
Police revealed to her who they've arrested for this crime.
She was a little shocked and very emotional that Brian did this to them. After we placed him under arrest, Brian was charged with 2nd-degree homicide.
He entered a guilty plea in a plea agreement.
And he is scheduled to get out of prison in 2045.
It's been hard the last couple months, just thinking about it again. The hardest part for me is not having the closure. So I know he knows that I love him, but it's just hard.
In a little town like Blue Earth, it's just hard to believe that that kind of horrendous crime can happen. When I talk to Candace, she remembers something that you shouldn't have to remember. And same with her girls, but they're trying their best to go on with their life. Candace and her girls came to our office they brought us some goodie packages, so it was nice to actually see them up and about and healing quite nicely.
No one wants to believe that someone that they loved is capable of harming them. They really don't. They believe they live in a safe place with safe people, and no one ever does live in a safe place with safe people. On the next American Detective, they can't think of a single reason why someone would want to fill his head with bullets.
So why'd you have to shoot him then?
I didn't shoot him.
Yet here he is. He's on the point of boil.
Did you shoot that man?
And boom, boom, boom.
Humans are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. My. I tell you, you see enough of this. You start to wonder if there is any kindness left in the world at all. You have to be kidding me if you think human nature is purely good. This is the story of a boy named Dustin Weedy, a kid who just wanted to belong, and the woman who destroyed everything. It is August 1st, 1987, in the quiet, happy community of Early, Iowa. Everyone knew everyone. It was the kind of place where you leave your door unlocked. But behind those closed doors, darkness lurks. Dustin was a good kid. He was the son of Mona and Brett Weedy. He grew up, went to school, and lived a normal life until he did not. You see, when the Roberts family moved in, the dynamic shifted. Tracy and Michael Roberts arrived in 1998. Tracy was a charmer, or so she seemed. She befriended Mona, and soon enough, the Weedy family was pulled into the chaos of the Roberts household. Dustin was a 17-year-old kid struggling to find his place, bullied at school, feeling like an outcast. When Michael Roberts offered to mentor him, Dustin finally felt like someone cared. What a mistake that was. The kid was just looking for a friend. Instead, he walked into a slaughter. On December 13th, 2001, the quiet of Early was shattered. The official story from Tracy Richter was a classic tale of self-defense. She claimed 2 intruders broke in, that she fought for her life, that she was strangled with pantyhose, that she had to fire a gun to save her children. She even produced a pink spiral notebook found in the car of Dustin Weedy that supposedly outlined a murder-for-hire plot involving her ex-husband, Dr. John Pittman. I tell you, the audacity of some people is truly breathtaking. Investigators found the notebook, and for years they were stumped. Why would a kid like Dustin do this? The answer is simple. He did not. He was the victim of a master manipulator. When I look at the evidence, I see the truth screaming through the lies. 9 shots, 9, and 3 of them in the back of the head. You have to be kidding me if you think that is a struggle between 2 people. Those were what we call sword wounds. That means the boy was already face down on the floor when the final shots were fired. He was not attacking. He was being executed. Tracy claimed she was strangled, but the medical examiner knew better. The marks on her neck did not match the way a human airway is blocked. She was never losing consciousness. The entire story was a fiction, a performance written by a woman desperate to frame her ex-husband in a custody battle. Dustin was just the pawn she decided to sacrifice. It took 9 years for the truth to catch up to her. In 2010, a new prosecutor took a look at the case, and the house of cards began to collapse. The witnesses, the inconsistencies in the crime scene, the physical impossibility of her account, it all pointed to one thing: murder. In 2011, Tracy Richter was convicted of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison. Justice was served. But what does justice mean for the dead? It does not bring Dustin back. It does not undo the agony of his parents. His father, Brett, could not bear the pain. 11 months after losing his son, he took his own life on the grave of his boy. It makes you sick to your stomach. You have to be kidding me if you think that is an ending. That is a tragedy, a life for a life, and then another life loss of grief. People ask me how I keep doing this job. I tell you, it is because of victims like Dustin. They deserve for the truth to be told, no matter how long it takes. And now the world knows. The world knows that Dustin Weedy was not a monster. He was just a boy who trusted the wrong person. It is a cold, hard world, and sometimes the monsters look just like your neighbors. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for reasons that make your skin crawl, and usually it is over nothing at all. You look at a life, a beautiful life, and you see how quickly it can be snuffed out by someone who claims to love them. It is October of 2015 in Montrose, Michigan. A time for joy, a wedding, but behind the scenes, a darkness is festering. Missy Thornton was a girl next door, loved by all, a mother, a sister, a best friend. She had everything to live for. Then there is Robert Prop. My, you think you know someone. They met in 2010 at a backyard barbecue. It looked innocent enough. A man, a father, a neighbor. But Robert was a man with secrets, a man who could not handle the light Missy brought into his life. He had his own business. He played the part of the devoted dad. But underneath, there was a rot. You have to be kidding me if you think that facade could last forever. By 2013, the cracks were showing. Drugs, lies, neglect. Relationships are fragile, especially when addiction enters a picture. He started using, and she started waking up. She saw the truth. She wanted more for herself and for their daughter, B. She moved out. She found her independence. I tell you, a woman finding her own strength is the most dangerous thing in the world to a weak, controlling man. He could not let go. He would not let go. July 6, 2016, the call comes in. Robert plays the part of the grieving boyfriend. He claims forced entry, a crowbar, the whole amateur dramatics routine. You have to be kidding me. You think you can fool a detective with a story like that? We see the truth in the eyes, in the bruises he claimed came from a bar fight that never happened. The camera does not lie. The surveillance footage does not lie. And the autopsy certainly does not lie. Neck compression, strangulation, a quiet, intimate murder. He thought he could lie his way out of it. Smear her memory on the stand with disgusting excuses about her private life. But justice has a way of catching up to monsters. He thought he was the hunter. But he was just a coward who could not face the fact that he was losing control. The jury saw right through him. 2 hours of deliberation. Life without parole. He lost his freedom, and she lost everything. A mother, a daughter, a sister, gone. He took away a future. He took away a friend. And he did not care. It makes me sick. People ask me if I ever get used to it, the senselessness of it all. I tell you, you never do. Every time you think you have seen the worst of humanity, someone comes along and proves you wrong. Missy Thornton deserved a life. She deserved to see her daughter grow up, but instead, she became a statistic in a cold, dark file. And that is the tragedy of it all. It is never about the motive. It is about the monster who decides that there is more important than another human life. That is the reality of the business, and it is a reality I have lived with for 23 years of homicide investigations. A life ended, a family shattered, and a monster behind bars where he belongs. Justice was served, but it does not bring her back. It never does, and that is the hardest part to swallow. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could ever imagine. And yet, the story of the Footo family is one that chills you to the bone because it happened in the quiet suburbs where people think they are safe. You look at these home movies from 1967, and you see a happy family. You see a father, Emery Sr., who lived the American dream after fleeing communist Hungary in 1956 to find a better life for his wife, Una, and his 3 boys were the pride of his life. But let me tell you, what you see on the screen and what happens behind closed doors are 2 very different things. My. You have to be kidding me if you think a little camera can capture the truth of a human soul. The family was a powder keg, and the fuse was burning for years. We get the call in July of 1991 when Una does not show up for work. Her car is in the garage. That is the first red flag. When we walk into that house, it is not a home anymore. It is a slaughterhouse. There is blood everywhere and is a scene of utter, senseless destruction. The mother is gone. The father is gone. And then we find the boys, Nicholas in the cemetery and Joe in the car. It is a tragedy of 4 lives snuffed out in a matter of hours. And where's the eldest son? Emery Jr. He claims he was camping. He claims he was miles away, but the evidence, it never lies. He had a paper in his pocket with a flight number 1408 and a bloody footprint that told a story he could not talk his way out of. He tried to blame his brother. He tried to blame a $200,000 drug deal. He tried to blame the world. But at the end of the day, there is only one person who pulled those triggers and held that knife. He called his father a monster, and perhaps he was right, because the cycle of abuse is a vicious thing. But then, look in the mirror. Son, what does that make you when you take the life of your mother, your father, and your own flesh and blood? You do not get to call yourself a victim. You are the monster, and that is the sad, cold truth of the Footo family. 4 lives ended because one man decided that the only way to escape his past was to destroy his future. It is a lesson that echoes in the halls of justice. We think we can outrun our demons, but the only thing we end up doing is dragging them into the light, where they consume us whole. The quiet afternoon of a Wednesday in May 2020, in the town of Gilbert, Arizona, began like any other day for the court of a family. Yet it would ultimately fracture into a devastating tragedy that remains shrouded in mystery 6 years later. Alicia Cordova was in the midst of her evening routine, performing household chores, when her 5-year-old daughter, Capri, rushed into the room in a state of profound distress. The young girl was holding an electronic device, explaining that she and her brother had been engaging in a video call with their father, 40-year-old Nick Cordova, at his workplace. The children recounted a sudden, terrifying sequence of events. They heard a loud bang, and their father, who had been actively participating in the conversation, abruptly stopped responding. The confusion and horror Alicia felt in those initial moments would evolve into a relentless, 6-year pursuit of justice. A battle marked by mounting circumstantial evidence and a frustrating lack of closure from the authorities. Despite the gravity of the incident and the evidence collected, no arrests or formal charges have been brought against any individuals in connection with the murder of Nick Cordova. The case of Nick Cordova stands as a haunting reminder of the necessity for transparency and accountability within the justice system, compelling a closer look at the investigation conducted by the Gilbert Police Department. The timeline of the tragedy, as reconstructed from official reports and first-hand accounts, places the incident at the offices of Gilbert Air, an air conditioning and heating business co-owned by Nick Cordova and his business partner, Dave Sweetman. Alicia, upon realizing that her husband was in immediate danger, initiated a frantic series of communications while simultaneously attempting to manage the well-being of her children. Her emergency call to local authorities captured the raw, unfolding panic of a spouse witnessing the unthinkable through the digital lens of a video call. She informed the dispatcher that she was certain she had observed a black glove or a weapon during the call, though she had not explicitly heard gunshots. The dispatchers attempted to navigate the situation while officers were dispatched to the business address on West Guadalupe Road. When Alicia arrived at the scene, her primary concern was the safety of her husband. Yet she was met not with medical personnel preparing for a rescue, but with crime scene tape and a heavy police presence. After an excruciating wait, the confirmation of her husband's death was delivered, a moment that fundamentally altered the trajectory of her life and ignited a resolve to uncover the truth. The scene encountered by the first responding officers was, by many accounts, highly irregular. One officer reported observing a man peeking through the blinds of the office, and upon making contact, the man identified himself as Dave Sweetman. He handed over a bloodied firearm, claiming it was his own and that he was the partner of the victim. Inside the office, the physical evidence pointed to a violent struggle. Furniture, including a desk, had been shifted, and a variety of items were scattered across the floor, including a human tooth and a hollowed-out potato, the latter of which sparked public speculation regarding its potential use. Though no official confirmation of such a function exists in police records, multiple bullet holes were discovered, including marks on the lobby desk and the window frame behind the victim's workstation. Dave Sweetman, while initially appearing distressed, provided an account to the police suggesting that two unidentified men, purportedly selling refrigerant, had entered the premises and initiated a violent confrontation. He maintained that he had been struck on the head and rendered unconscious, claiming to have no memory of the actual shooting of his partner. The investigation took a turn when officers discovered a significant sum of cash in Dave Sweetman's possession, a detail that contradicted his initial claim that he had surrendered all his money to the assailants. During subsequent interviews, his account evolved as he clarified that he had only given the intruders the cash from one specific pocket. This discrepancy served as an early indicator that the narrative provided by the business partner was not entirely consistent. Furthermore, the surveillance footage from the building, while corroborating some aspects of the intruder's entry and exit, left critical gaps. The office space where the struggle allegedly occurred lacked camera coverage, leaving the exact sequence of events in that room to be interpreted through the lens of conflicting statements. The video did, however, capture the two suspects fleeing in an older red and silver Ford F-150 truck. Despite this evidence, the investigation into the involvement of the business partner remained ambiguous, and he was eventually released, with investigators noting that his role in the homicide could not be definitively cleared, yet they lacked sufficient evidence to pursue charges at that time. The history of the business partnership between Nick Cordova and Dave Sweetman adds a layer of complexity to the narrative. Nick, a man described as kind, generous, and devoted to his family, had entered the partnership as a significant professional leap. However, as Alicia observed, tensions began to manifest several months prior to the incident. Reports surfaced regarding large, unauthorized withdrawals from the company accounts by Dave Sweetman, and Nick expressed growing anxiety about his partner's financial dealings and the potential for illegal activities linked to other businesses owned by Sweetman. Perhaps most chilling in retrospect were the conversations Nick had with his wife regarding life insurance policies. He had expressed concerns about his partner's insistence on cross-coverage policies, a move that Nick found highly unsettling, especially after learning that a previous business partner had refused such arrangements to avoid the very scenario that ultimately unfolded. The financial implications of these policies became a central point of contention, with allegations of forged signatures and lengthy legal battles ensuing in the years following the murder. The frustration felt by the family and the public regarding the investigation is compounded by the lack of transparency in the release of public records. Alicia Cordova has faced significant hurdles in her attempts to obtain information, with large portions of the police files provided to her redacted, leaving her with more questions than answers. The turnover in detectives assigned to the case has further contributed to a sense of instability in the investigation. At one point, a detective appeared to make significant progress, providing updates that offered a glimmer of hope to the family, only to be moved to different duties shortly thereafter. This cycle of reassignment and the perceived lack of progress have led many to question the thoroughness of the inquiry. The recent scrutiny surrounding the Gilbert Police Department, including investigations by the State Attorney General's office into allegations of withheld or destroyed records, has only heightened the concerns of the Cordova family and other members of the community who feel that the truth about the tragedy has been buried by administrative failures. In the pursuit of justice, Alicia Cordova has remained an unwavering advocate for her husband, utilizing every available platform to keep his story in the public consciousness. She has worked to analyze the evidence, including the surveillance footage that she was eventually permitted to view. Her review of this footage provided insights that were not clearly articulated in initial reports, such as the observation of Dave Sweetman monitoring the entrance through the blinds moments before the arrival of the suspects. This observation, coupled with the unexplained financial maneuvers and the history of Sweetman's past legal entanglements, continues to fuel her suspicion that the truth about the events of that May evening has yet to be fully revealed. The case of Nick Cordova is not merely a record of a cold case. It is a testament to the resilience of a spouse committed to the memory of her husband and the relentless demand for accountability in a community seeking to understand how such a tragedy could go unsolved for so many years. The reward for information remains active, and the hope for a breakthrough, however distant, continues to drive the efforts of those who refuse to let the story of Nick Cordova fade into silence. The quiet suburban streets of Gilbert, Arizona, often serve as the backdrop of the American dream, a place where families settle to raise their children, pursue professional success, and build a future. Yet, beneath the veneer of this tranquil community, there exists a haunting silence surrounding the death of Dr. Laura Sweetman, a story that has remained locked away for over 13 years. Laura was a woman of immense talent, a pediatric neurologist whose dedication to her patients at Phoenix Children's Hospital was surpassed only by her love for her 3 sons. As a junior in high school, she was a bright light in her community, participating in the yearbook club and the swim team, embodying the promise of a future filled with hope. However, the path to her untimely passing on the 9th of December, 2013, reveals a complex web of personal struggles, financial instability, and an investigative process that left more questions than answers. The timeline leading up to that tragic morning in December is marked by a tumultuous separation from her husband, Dave Sweetman. For years, those close to Laura described a marriage defined by emotional distance and the heavy burden of secrets. By 2013, Laura discovered that Dave had been living a life entirely separate from their family, including a child from another relationship that remained unknown to her. The realization was a catalyst for a desperate pursuit of independence. Laura had meticulously planned to secure a new home and distance herself and their 3 children from the environment that had become a source of profound fear. On the 21st of April, 2013, an incident occurred that necessitated police intervention, where Laura reported being held against her will, despite the gravity of her plea. The ensuing legal proceedings and the eventual dismissal of charges for insufficient evidence left Laura in a state of deep vulnerability. She lived the final months of her life in a rental home, managing a demanding medical career while navigating the constant, gnawing anxiety that she was being followed or watched. The events of the final weekend of Laura's life remained shrouded in uncertainty. She had spent Thanksgiving in San Diego, returning to find her children in their father's care for the week. On the morning she was discovered, a co-worker, concerned by her uncharacteristic absence, sent a trusted contact to check on her. The scene within her home suggested a life interrupted. A plastic gate, typically used to manage her pets, was found discarded at the base of the staircase, and the back door, which Laura was known to lock religiously, stood unlocked. Laura was found in her bathtub, unresponsive. The discovery was met with a swift emergency response, but it was clear that she had been gone for hours. The subsequent medical examiner's report, authored by Dr. Mark Shelley, documented fresh bruising across her body alongside older injuries. yet it ultimately classified the cause and manner of death as undetermined. This classification effectively stalled the investigation, leaving a grieving family and a community of friends without the closure they desperately sought. What makes this case particularly agonizing for those who knew and loved Laura is the systemic failure that seems to permeate the records. The investigation failed to explore the movements of the various men in Laura's life during that critical weekend, nor did it pursue the lead provided by a neighbor who reported a suspicious vehicle parked in Laura's driveway just weeks before her death. The medical examiner's findings, which cited a previous heart attack that cardiologists had no record of, were later called into question. Furthermore, the revelation of professional histories of those involved in the processing of her autopsy, men who had faced their own significant disciplinary actions, has cast a long shadow over the integrity of the initial findings. For a community that prides itself on resilience and the pursuit of justice, the lack of transparency in the Gilbert Police Department's handling of the case is a bitter pill to swallow. The spirit of Laura Sweetman, however, continues to reside in the memories of those she served and the children she nurtured. She was a woman who found joy in the small moments of domestic life and professional achievement, and her loved ones famously wore colorful clothing to her funeral to honor her vibrant personality. This story is not merely one of loss. It is a call to recognize the strength of those who fight to protect their families in the face of overwhelming odds. It serves as a reminder that the safety and well-being of every member of our society depend upon a system that is held to the highest standards of accountability and care. While the official investigation into Laura's death remains inactive, the chorus of voices seeking the truth has not been silenced. The path toward justice requires the persistence of a community that refuses to forget, and the story of Dr. Laura Sweetman remains a testament to the enduring need for transparency, diligence, and the compassionate pursuit of truth in the heart of America. Do you believe that public pressure and media attention are the most effective tools for reopening cold cases when institutional systems fail to provide answers? The tragic tale of Stephanie Casper serves as a haunting reminder of how a single act of violence can ripple across decades, leaving behind a profound legacy of unanswered questions and enduring grief. It is a story that has lingered over the quiet corners of Wisconsin for more than 57 years, a narrative defined by the loss of a vibrant young woman and the relentless, often frustrating pursuit of truth by those who refuse to let her memory fade into the annals of history. In the midsummer of 1969, the atmosphere in Racine County was heavy, with a steady drizzle and the cooling embrace of a damp July. For the community, it was a time of simple pleasures, where families sought refuge near the old steel trestle bridge on 8 Mile Road, a structure that had long since been condemned, yet remained a silent witness to the passage of time. On that Wednesday afternoon, the discovery of what was initially mistaken for a discarded pile of refuse would shatter the peace of the county and initiate an investigation that would span generations. What the young boy discovered that day was far from natural. It was the dismembered remains of a teenager, concealed with methodical precision that chilled investigators to the bone. The investigation that followed revealed that the perpetrator possessed not only time and patience, but a dark, chilling level of control. The torso and left leg of the victim remained missing, never recovered by search efforts, suggesting a deliberate act of disposal that moved far beyond the riverbank where she was found. By the early hours of July 10, 1969, the victim was identified as 18-year-old Stephanie Casper. Stephanie was a young woman on the cusp of adulthood, having just graduated high school with dreams and a quiet ambition to build a life of her own. She was known to her neighbors as a kind, protective older sister who ensured that those around her felt included and valued. Her life was anchored by her part-time work at a local restaurant, where her routines provided a sense of normalcy that was ultimately and cruelly taken from her. The investigation into Stephanie's death revealed a complex web of social dynamics, secrets, and missed opportunities for justice. There were whispers of a secret relationship with a young serviceman, fueled by the societal pressures of the era, and speculation regarding the involvement of individuals within her own professional sphere. Yet, as the years stretched into decades, the leads often proved to be dead ends. Detectives navigated a labyrinth of conflicting testimonies, anonymous tips, and the limitations of forensic technology, while the Casper family lived with the crushing weight of a loss that refused to provide closure. The case of Stephanie Casper is not merely a chronicle of a cold case. It is a reflection of the resilience of a community and the enduring strength of the human spirit. It highlights the dedication of law enforcement officers, such as Lieutenant Brian Van Sack, who have committed themselves to navigating the complexities of historical records, modern DNA advancements, and emotional toll of an unsolved tragedy. The case has evolved, with new evidence and potential leads surfacing through the concerted efforts of investigators, journalists, and citizens who continue to advocate for justice. Despite the passage of time, the spirit of solidarity among those seeking answers remains steadfast. From the initial discovery of the remains to the modern-day application of advanced forensic science, every piece of the puzzle is treated with the gravity it deserves. The search for the truth regarding Stephanie's final hours is characterized by a deep empathy for her family and an unwavering commitment to restoring her story to the light. It serves as a testament to the fact that no individual is ever truly forgotten, and the quest for accountability persists as a fundamental pillar of a compassionate society. As the investigation continues to unfold, the legacy of Stephanie Casper remains deeply embedded in the cultural memory of the region. Her life, though cut short, continues to inspire a dialogue about safety, community awareness, and the importance of remembering those who can no longer speak for themselves. The efforts to resolve this case are a tribute to the values of justice and perseverance that define the American experience, ensuring that even in the face of profound adversity, the commitment to uncovering the truth remains an essential part of the healing process for a grieving family and a concerned public. While the path to resolution has been fraught with challenges, ranging from bureaucratic hurdles to the inevitable limitations of evidence gathered over half a century ago, the commitment of those involved in the case is a testament to the enduring power of hope. The story of Stephanie Casper is a call to action for anyone who may hold a fragment of the truth, reminding us all that justice, no matter how delayed, is a goal worth pursuing with every available resource. As the investigation presses forward, the community stands with the Casper family, honoring the memory of a young woman whose life continues to matter and whose story, even after all these years, demands to be heard with clarity, dignity, and the promise of final, truthful accounting. The narrative surrounding Stephanie Casper serves as an essential, if painful, piece of local history, prompting ongoing discussions about how to protect the most vulnerable members of society. By acknowledging the pain of the past, while diligently pursuing the technological and investigative advancements of the present, the investigators hope to provide the family with the peace they have sought for over 50 years. The case stands as a reminder of the importance of maintaining an active interest in justice, proving that the commitment of a few can honor the memory of one, and that the search for the truth is a journey that, however long, is marked by the relentless pursuit of integrity and the hope for a long-awaited resolution. The disappearance of Melissa Casillas remains a haunting enigma, a puzzle shrouded in the high desert mist of Taos County, New Mexico. As we reflect on the events that unfolded on that late June afternoon in 2025, the narrative does not merely concern a missing person. It is a tapestry of fractured perceptions, a family's desperate search for closure, and the unsettling questions that arise when lives intersect with the quiet, expansive wilderness of the American West. On the afternoon of Thursday, June 26, 2025, the life of 18-year-old Sierra Casillas shifted irrevocably. While working at a local coffee shop in Taos, she received a call from her father, Mark. His voice, usually steady, carried an uncharacteristic tension. He had been informed by Melissa's supervisor at the Los Alamos National Laboratory that she had failed to report for her shift. To Mark, who shared a vehicle with his wife for their daily commute, this was an impossibility. Yet, Sierra held a crucial piece of the timeline. Her mother had returned home early that morning, citing a forgotten security badge, and had even stopped by the coffee shop shortly before 1 o'clock to drop off lunch. The subsequent hours spiraled into a nightmare of digital silence. When Sierra checked her mother's location, the screen offered no response. The signal had simply ceased. Upon returning to their home, Sierra found an eerie domestic tableau. The family vehicle was in the driveway, the house was locked, and Melissa's personal effects, her purse, wallet, and 2 cellular phones, lay in plain sight. Most chillingly, both phones had been factory reset, stripped of their history as if to erase a life in motion. As investigators and family members converged, 2 distinct factions emerged, each clinging to their own interpretation of the silence. On one side stands Marcasius, a professional backcountry outfitter who argues that the pressures of mounting financial debt and professional setbacks led Melissa to make the difficult choice to walk away. His supporters point to surveillance footage from later that afternoon, which captured a woman appearing to be Melissa walking briskly along Highway 518, carrying a backpack. This image, they suggest, is proof of a woman reclaiming her autonomy. Conversely, the Mondragons, Melissa's parents, sister, and niece, remain steadfast in their conviction that she was a victim of foul play. They cite the discovery of unexplained tire tracks, a mysterious stain in the home that tested positive for blood, and the fact that Melissa left behind not only her daily necessities, but also her identity. To them, the idea that a devoted mother would abandon her daughter, Sierra, during such a pivotal time in her life is fundamentally incompatible with the woman they knew. The investigation has been further complicated by the intersection of local gossip and broader, more unsettling theories. From reports of a man on horseback claiming to have discovered a body to the wilder, national discourse regarding the disappearances of professionals with ties to sensitive aerospace and laboratory research. The case has become a lightning rod for speculation. Yet, despite the deployment of drones, helicopters, and K-9 units across the rugged terrain of northern New Mexico, the trail has gone cold. At the heart of this tragedy is the enduring spirit of a family trapped in the purgatory of the unknown. Whether Melissa Casillas chose to vanish to escape the weight of her circumstances, or whether she was intercepted by forces beyond our current understanding, the fundamental human element remains. A mother is missing, a daughter is grieving, and a community is left to contemplate the fragility of our daily lives. In the vast, open landscapes of New Mexico, where the horizon stretches into eternity, it is easy to feel small. Yet, it is within this very landscape that the values of resilience and community pride shine brightest. The search for Melissa is not merely a task for law enforcement. It is a testament to the bonds of kinship and the refusal to let a loved one fade into the silence. As we share this report, we honor the memory of the woman Melissa was and the hope that, eventually, the missing pieces of this puzzle will align. If you hold any information, however small, the New Mexico State Police at 505-425-6771 remain the conduit for truth, hoping to bring peace to those who continue to wait for an answer in the quiet hills of Taos. The quiet hum of a Wednesday evening in Gilbert, Arizona, was shattered on that 20th day of May, 2020, in a way that would alter the trajectory of a family forever. For Alicia Cordova, the routine of household chores was interrupted not by the typical cacophony of a bustling home, but by the frantic, terrified voice of her 5-year-old daughter, Capri. What followed was a digital witness to horror. A FaceTime call between 2 young children and their father, 40-year-old Nick Cordova, that descended into silence, chaos, and ultimately, the echoes of a life taken too soon. What Alicia witnessed through that small, glowing screen would become the catalyst for a 6-year battle for truth justice, and accountability. A struggle that remains as unresolved today as it was in the initial aftermath of the shooting at Gilbert Air. Nick Cordova was a man defined by his ambition and his deep-seated commitment to the people around him. Raised by a single mother who had him when she was just 16, Nick learned early the responsibilities of leadership and protection. He was a father figure to his younger siblings, a devoted husband, and an entrepreneur who believed that a challenge was simply an opportunity waiting to be seized. When he stepped into the HVAC business at 511 West Guadalupe Road, he saw the chance to build something lasting for his family. He entered into a partnership with Dave Sweetman, a man who, unknown to Nick at the time, brought with him a history of professional and personal turbulence that would cast a long, dark shadow over the future of the company. The events of that Wednesday evening began just before 5:30 in the afternoon. As Alicia raced toward the office, her mind reeling from the frantic call, she held on to hope that Nick, a man she viewed as invincible, had survived. When she arrived, however, the scene was not one of rescue, but a containment. The yellow police tape and the somber silence of the officers on site spoke louder than any words could. It was there, amidst confusion and the desperate inquiries of a wife searching for her husband, that the finality of her loss was delivered. Nick was gone, leaving behind a grieving family and a web of questions that the Gilbert Police Department has struggled to untangle for over 6 years. The scene inside the office presented a chaotic tableau. Upon arrival, responding officers encountered Dave Sweetman, who, according to police reports, emerged from the building in a state of high agitation, handing over a bloodied firearm while claiming to be the victim's partner. The office itself bore the scars of a struggle: a displaced desk, a discarded tooth, a hollowed-out potato, which fueled rampant online speculation, and multiple bullet holes etched into the walls and furniture. Yet, amidst the disorder, a singular question persisted: who was responsible for the death of Nick Cordova? Dave Sweetman provided a narrative of a robbery gone wrong. He told investigators that 2 men in masks had entered the office, confronted them, and engaged in a violent struggle. He claimed to have been incapacitated after being struck in the head, only to regain consciousness after the assailants had fled, at which point he attempted to check on Nick and alert authorities. While surveillance footage did corroborate the presence of 2 men in a red and silver Ford F-150 truck. The inconsistencies in Dave's account, including the discovery of over $1,000 in his pocket despite his claims that the suspects had taken all his money, remained a point of significant contention for Alicia and the investigative community. The suspicion held by Alicia was not born of mere grief, but of a growing list of red flags that had accumulated in the months preceding the shooting. Nick had expressed concerns about his safety, feeling as though he were being watched and questioning the financial integrity of his business partner. The revelation that life insurance policies had been taken out against each other, a move Dave had allegedly pushed for, added a chilling layer of motive that transformed a business tragedy into a potential criminal conspiracy. Despite Alicia's persistent efforts to bring these concerns to the forefront, the investigation seemed to stall, leaving her to navigate the legal and emotional aftermath on her own. For years, the case of Nick Cordova has been marked by a revolving door of detectives, redactions in official documents, and a persistent lack of transparency that has deepened the frustration of those left behind. The promise of justice often felt like a mirage, with progress reports and PowerPoint presentations serving as temporary comfort before being followed by silence or organizational changes that reset the momentum. The struggle to obtain records and the ongoing allegations regarding the handling of police documentation in Gilbert have created an environment of skepticism, where families like the Cordovas find themselves fighting not only for their loved ones, but for the integrity of the process itself. In 25, a turning point occurred when Alicia was finally granted the opportunity to view the surveillance footage that had been central to the investigation. The experience was agonizing, a visual confirmation of the trauma she had been processing since 2020, watching the moments leading up to the shooting. She noted details that had not been highlighted in previous reports: the calculated movements of her husband's partner, the deliberate nature of the intrusion, and the tragic finality of the act itself. This viewing did not bring closure. Instead, it reignited her resolve to see the case move forward and to ensure that the truth of what happened that evening is fully brought to light. The legacy of Nick Cordova is one of resilience and an enduring bond that has transcended his untimely passing. His family, supported by an army of individuals who have followed the search for justice, refuses to let his story fade into the archive of unsolved cases. They continue to call for answers, for transparency, and for a comprehensive investigation that does not shy away from the difficult questions surrounding the financial and professional circumstances leading up to that fatal Wednesday. The commitment to keeping his name alive is a testament to the character of the man. He was a provider, a protector, and a loved father whose impact continues to be felt in every step toward justice. As the years continue to pass, the call for information remains vital. The community is urged to come forward if they possess any details regarding the events of May 20, 2020, in Gilbert, Arizona. The Gilbert Police Department and Silent Witness serve as the conduits for this essential truth-seeking process, with the hope that the reward for information and the unyielding efforts of those closest to Nick will eventually lead to the identification of those responsible. The quest for justice is not merely an attempt to punish the guilty. It is a fundamental act of healing and an affirmation that even in the face of immense tragedy, the truth has a way of finding its voice. The story of Nick Cordova is not just a case file. It is the story of a life interrupted and the unwavering love of those who carry his memory. It serves as a reminder of the fragility of existence and the strength required to stand against the silence that often follows senseless violence. For Alicia and her children, the path forward is paved with the hope that the system will eventually honor the life that was lost by ensuring that accountability is not just a hope, but reality. Until that day, the search continues, fueled by the same spirit of determination that defined Nick's life, promising that the search for justice for Nick Cordova will not end until full truth is revealed. The following report chronicles the events surrounding the untimely death of Dr. Laura Sweetman, a story that has remained shrouded in silence and unresolved questions for over 12 years. This narrative is constructed from official records, investigative reporting, and the shared experiences of those who knew a woman described as a devoted mother, a compassionate pediatric neurologist, and a vibrant soul whose life was cut short in Gilbert, Arizona. As we delve into the details of the investigation, we do so with a commitment to clarity, seeking to honor the memory of a professional whose life was defined by her service to the most vulnerable among us and the spirit of a community that continues to seek answers in the face of institutional opacity. The story of Laura Sweetman begins with a portrait of achievement and the high expectations of the American dream. Raised in California, Laura was a dedicated student and athlete who eventually pursued a rigorous path in medicine, specializing in pediatric neurology. Her professional life at Phoenix Children's Hospital was marked by a deep commitment to her young patients, even as her personal life became increasingly marked by turbulence. She was married to Dave Sweetman, a local businessman, and together they were raising 3 sons. To the outside world, they were a standard family, yet behind closed doors, those close to Laura recount a different reality. Friends have described a marriage defined by emotional and mental strain, where Laura often felt diminished. By the spring of 2013, the pressures of that relationship reached a breaking point when Laura discovered that her husband had been leading an undisclosed life, including a separate family. In April of 2013, Laura took decisive steps to end her marriage, planning a separation that she hoped would secure a safer future for herself and her children. During a heated altercation that same month, Laura sought refuge and assistance, reporting to local law enforcement that she had been held against her will and threatened. While that incident led to an order of protection and a temporary separation, the subsequent months were filled with anxieties common to high-conflict domestic transitions. Laura juggled her demanding medical career, the complexities of managing student loan debt, and the persistent fear that she was being monitored. By November of 2013, A neighbor noted a suspicious vehicle parked near Laura's home, a detail documented in neighborhood reports, but never fully integrated into broader investigative narrative of her case. On the morning of December 9th, 2013, the silence of Laura's home was shattered when a friend went to check on her after she failed to arrive for her scheduled shifts at the hospital. She was discovered unresponsive in her bathtub. The scene was noted as containing anomalous details, including a child safety gate displaced from its usual position at the base of the stairs, and a rear door found unlocked, departing from Laura's standard evening security rituals. First responders documented her condition, noting she was beyond resuscitation, despite the presence of physical trauma in the form of bruising and contusions. The subsequent official inquiry struggled to provide a definitive cause or manner of death. The official ruling remained undetermined, a classification that effectively halted active investigative efforts just 10 months later. The path of the investigation into Laura's death is complicated by the involvement of individuals with controversial professional histories. Dr. Mark Shelley, the medical examiner who performed the autopsy, had previously been subject to disciplinary actions in another jurisdiction regarding the handling of sensitive evidence. Similarly, the laboratory director involved in the toxicology screening had a past conviction for the theft of evidence from a crime lab. These revelations have led many in Laura's circle, and those reviewing the case today, to question the integrity and thoroughness of the original findings. The toxicology report was clean, yielding no evidence of substances that could explain her passing. Yet questions persist regarding why certain tests were omitted or why specific medical history was attributed to her in records that appear to contradict anatomical findings. In the years that followed, the absence of a proactive police investigation created a vacuum often filled by speculation. Many who knew Laura remained fixated on her former husband, Dave, pointing to the history of domestic discord and the lack of clarity surrounding his whereabouts during the window of her death. Yet, the investigation failed to explore other potential avenues, including the men with whom Laura had been in contact in the weeks preceding her passing. One individual, a gym trainer who was with Laura on the evening before she died, was interviewed, but key details regarding his departure times and his alibi remained unverified. The failure to conduct a broad inquiry into these social connections has left many in the community feeling that justice was sidelined. The resilience of Laura's family, friends, and colleagues remains the enduring spirit of this story. They recall a woman who balanced immense professional responsibilities with a love for life, who, despite the weight of personal struggles, radiated warmth and positivity. The decision to celebrate her life with color rather than the somber tones of traditional funeral attire is a testament to the character she displayed even in her most difficult hours. As we reflect on this case, it serves as a sobering reminder of the necessity for transparency and rigorous standards in the systems charged with the solemn duty of investigating the loss of a life. The call for a re-examination of these events is not merely a search for fault, but a pursuit of the truth that Laura Sweetman, her children, and the community she served deserve. As the years continue to pass, the hope remains that the records surrounding this case will be subjected to the scrutiny they were denied in the past. Transparency in law enforcement and the medical examiner's office is the foundation of public trust, and it is in that spirit that this account is presented. We encourage all who hold information or wish to see a more comprehensive pursuit of justice to continue the conversation. The life of a dedicated doctor, a mother, and a friend remains a significant chapter in the history of the Gilbert community, one that is not fully closed until the questions surrounding her final moments are answered with the clarity and professional integrity that every individual is owed under the law. We stand with those who remember Laura for the light she brought to her practice and the courage she showed in seeking a new beginning, ensuring that her story is not forgotten by those who have the power to finally bring it to rest. The following report chronicles the events surrounding the death of Laura Sweetman, a dedicated pediatric neurologist whose life was prematurely cut short in the year 2013. As we examine the echoes of this tragedy, we do so with the utmost respect for her legacy as a healer, a mother, and a vibrant soul who touched the lives of countless children in the Phoenix area. Her story is one that lingers in the quiet corners of Gilbert, Arizona, not because it is forgotten, but because for the family, friends, and patients who loved her, the quest for truth remains an unfinished chapter. Laura Sweetman was a woman defined by her brilliance and her resilience. As a board-certified specialist in pediatric neurology at Phoenix Children's Hospital, she navigated the complex landscapes of the human brain with precision and empathy. To those she treated, she was more than just a physician. She was a beacon of hope for families facing the most daunting health challenges. Yet, beneath the professional veneer of a life dedicated to medicine and the upbringing of 3 sons, there existed a private narrative of turbulence. In the years leading up to her passing, Laura faced a profound personal trial of a marriage that had drifted far from the ideals of her youth. The unraveling of her domestic life began in earnest when she discovered that her husband, Dave Sweetman, was leading a life that diverged sharply from the picture-perfect family dynamic they had projected. The discovery of an undisclosed second family, a revelation that came to light through the modern lens of digital investigation, served as a catalyst for Laura. She resolved to reclaim her independence, planning a quiet departure that would protect her children from the instability that had come to define their home. It was during this pivotal transition in the spring of 2013 that the situation escalated, leading to a domestic violence incident that brought law enforcement to their doorstep. That evening, documented by an audio recording that captured the desperate pleas of a woman seeking to escape, became a defining marker of the fear that had begun to overshadow her daily existence. Following this incident, an order of protection was established, and Laura began a new chapter in a rental home, seeking to balance the demands of her neurology practice with the necessity of ensuring her safety. Friends described this time as one of immense pressure. Laura was navigating not only the emotional weight of a pending divorce, but also the persistent and unsettling anxiety that she was being monitored. Reports of suspicious vehicle, a white sport utility vehicle, seen loitering near her driveway in the final weeks of her life, painted a picture of a woman living under a cloud of uncertainty. Neighbors, ever the keepers of local watch, noted the vehicle and the dismissive nature of the stranger behind the wheel, yet these reports, like many threads in this complex tapestry, failed to gain the traction of formal, sustained police investigation. On the morning of December the 9th, 2013, the silence of Laura home was broken by the discovery of her body. For a physician of her caliber, an unexplained absence from the hospital was the first sign that something was profoundly wrong. She was found in her bathtub, a site of personal solace where she often sought quiet moments of reflection after long shifts. When first responders arrived, they encountered a scene that defied immediate explanation. While the physical environment showed no signs of forced entry or the violent struggle one might associate with such a tragedy, the presence and displaced gate at the foot of the stairs and the unlocked back door offered quiet, nagging questions about what transpired in the hours prior. The ensuing investigation, hampered by limited resources and an ultimate ruling of undetermined cause and manner of death, left a vacuum where justice was expected to reside. The medical examiner report, which cited a history of a previous heart attack, a claim that appeared at odds with the findings of her own cardiologist, became a focal point for those seeking answers. The lack of clarity regarding toxicological screenings and the absence of a comprehensive review process only served to deepen the frustration of those who knew Laura best. It is a sobering reality that in a nation as vast as the United States, where the pursuit of truth is a cornerstone of our justice system, the mechanisms intended to provide that truth can sometimes fall short due to the stark realities of administrative shortages and evolving standards of practice. The narrative of Laura Sweetman is further complicated by the shadow cast by the later death of Nick Cordova, a business associate of her former husband, whose life was taken in a violent confrontation in 2020. When one considers the persistent questions surrounding the men in Laura's life, the various acquaintances she had been communicating with, the complexities of her financial entanglements, and the overarching fear that permeated her final months, it becomes clear that this is a case demanding a holistic examination. The failure to deeply investigate the various potential paths and individuals surrounding Laura has left her family, including her father and children, in a state of perpetual limbo. As we look back on the life of Laura Sweetman, we do not wish to dwell in the dark, but rather to illuminate the light she brought into the world. She was a woman who believed in the beauty of life, who taught her sons the value of hard work, and who served her community with grace. The spirit of the American heartland is one of collective responsibility, where we look out for one another and demand that the systems meant to protect us remain robust and accountable. For Laura, the quest is not one of vengeance, but of resolution. In the spirit of community, we honor her by refusing to let her memory fade into the cold archives of inactive files. We invite those who cherish the truth to reflect on her journey, to recognize the fragility of life, and to appreciate the profound importance of professional integrity in every facet of our public institutions. Laura Sweetman deserves to be remembered not as a mystery, but as a person whose voice, though silenced, continues to speak to the necessity of vigilance and the enduring power of empathy. Though the years have passed, the echoes of her story remain a reminder of our collective duty to ensure that for every life that has touched ours, there is an honest, dedicated, and thorough pursuit of the truth. May her legacy continue to inspire those who strive for justice, and may her family find the peace that comes only with the clarity they have sought for so long. The disappearance of Melissa Casillas remains a haunting enigma, a case that defies simple categorization and continues to divide those closest to her. On the afternoon of Thursday, June 26, 2025, the life of 42-year-old Melissa Casillas, an administrative assistant at Los Alamos National Laboratory, fractured into uncertainty. Her 18-year-old daughter, Sierra, working at a local coffee shop in Taos, New Mexico, received a cryptic alert from her father, Mark. He had been informed by Melissa's supervisor that she had failed to report for work that day, a jarring anomaly for a woman known for her professional dedication and daily, synchronized commute with her husband. As the afternoon unfolded, the initial concern shifted into a frantic, desperate search for answers. Sierra recalled seeing her mother earlier that day, just before 1 o'clock, when Melissa stopped by the shop to drop off lunch. Yet, when Sierra attempted to reach her mother via phone, the blue-colored text bubble, the universal signal of a failed delivery on an iPhone, signaled something was gravely wrong. Attempts to track Melissa's location via a shared application resulted in a blank screen, the digital footprint of her existence having abruptly ceased. Upon arriving at the family home, Sierra discovered a scene that defied logical explanation. Melissa's car was in the driveway, her keys and work badge were resting on the kitchen table, and both of her personal cell phones were found wiped clean, reset to factory settings, as if she were preparing to discard her digital identity entirely. The investigation into Melissa's vanishing became a collision of competing narratives. On one side stood Mark and his daughters, who pointed toward the immense financial pressures mounting against the couple, including garnished wages and suspended security clearances at the lab, as a catalyst for her decision to simply walk away. They argued that the stress had reached a breaking point, suggesting that Melissa, overwhelmed and perhaps seeking a new beginning, chose to sever ties with her former life. Conversely, the family of her birth, the Mondragons, remained steadfast in their belief that Melissa, a devoted mother and a woman deeply embedded in her community, would never have abandoned her daughter voluntarily. They pointed toward the suspicious nature of the evidence, including the lack of a note, the presence of unexplained tire tracks in the driveway, and what they perceived as a disturbing, dismissive attitude from Mark regarding the investigation. Adding to the complexity of this mystery was a sighting reported by a longtime acquaintance, Lloyd, who claimed to have seen a woman matching Melissa's description walking along Highway 518 on the afternoon of her disappearance. While initial reports described the woman as staggering, later video surveillance footage retrieved by Mark and Sierra revealed a woman appearing to be Melissa walking alone with a backpack, moving with purposeful haste. This footage provided a visual confirmation that she had indeed left her home on her own 2 feet. Yet it raised more questions than it answered. Where was she headed? Why the meticulous erasure of her digital history? And why did the investigation seem to stall, hampered by conflicting testimonies, rumors of abuse, and the tragic, lingering echoes of a previous, unrelated car accident involving Sierra's ex-boyfriend? The search for Melissa has been further complicated by the emergence of disturbing, unverified theories. Whispers of connection to a series of disappearances involving scientists and researchers associated with government labs have cast a long, chilling shadow over the case, though law enforcement has found no concrete evidence linking these disparate events. Reports of a mysterious woman who allegedly visited Sierra claiming to have psychic abilities and knowledge of Melissa's whereabouts were later denied by the individual herself, leaving the family to wonder if they were being manipulated by an unknown actor. Even more bizarre were the interactions with a local man who reportedly boasted of finding a body, a lead that police dismissed after a brief, inconclusive encounter. As the months pass, the lack of definitive forensic evidence, despite the discovery of a single, unexplained drop of blood near a fish tank in the family home, leaves the case in a state of suspended animation. There's been no activity on Melissa's bank accounts, no passport applications, and no signs of the medication she required as a thyroid cancer survivor. For the loved one she left behind, the silence is a physical weight. The divide between the Casillas and Mondragon families has deepened, with accusations of exploitation and mishandled search efforts further complicating the path to justice or closure. The mystery of Melissa Casillas is not merely a tale of a missing person. It is a profound reflection of the fragility of human connection and the terrifying reality that, in an instant, a person can simply cease to be, leaving behind a puzzle that may never be fully assembled. For those who still hold out hope for her return, or at least for the truth, the plea remains as urgent today as it was in June of 2025. If you have information, the New Mexico State Police are waiting to hear from you. The pursuit of answers continues, driven by the desperate need to understand what happened on that ordinary Thursday in Taos, and to fill the silence where a woman's voice once belonged. Do you want to help you draft a follow-up inquiry for the New Mexico State Police or explore a specific investigative angle further? Humans are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine, but usually it always comes back to the oldest motive in the book, which is greed. I tell you, when you look at the murder of 40-year-old Nicholas Cordova in May of 2020, you are looking at a tragedy born entirely of greed and cowardice. Nicholas was a man who built his life on hard work. He was raised by his grandparents, took on a role of a father figure for his younger siblings, and genuinely wanted to build something of his own. He bought into a heating and air conditioning business in Gilbert, Arizona, because he liked a challenge. But his fatal flaw was his optimism. He believed he could manage a business partner who had a history of fraud, assault, and trespassing. That partner was Dave Sweetman. Let me tell you about Dave. Dave is the kind of man who operates in the shadows of his own incompetence. A man obsessed with money who views human beings as nothing more than walking dollar signs. 6 months before the murder, Dave siphoned $30,000 from the company account, followed by another $15,000. When Nicholas confronted him, Dave made excuses. Then Dave suggested they take out life insurance policies on each other. Not a small policy, mind you, but policies totaling $8 million. Nicholas told his wife Alicia that he felt he was being watched. He even joked that Dave might hire a hitman to collect the insurance money. That was no joke. That was a premonition. Nicholas was a protector by nature, an honorable man who wanted to believe his hard work could overcome the deceit of a man who lacked a moral compass. On a Wednesday evening at roughly 5:30, Nicholas was at his desk. His wife and his daughter, who was 5 years old, were talking to him on a video call. Suddenly, the domestic piece of that call was shattered by commotion, shouting, and a sudden drop in response. Alicia heard her husband groaning in pain. The absolute callousness required to brutalize a man while his family listens is beyond comprehension. Alicia drove frantically to the office only to find it surrounded by police tape. Inside the building, the scene was a stage play of absolute absurdity. Responding officers found Dave peeking through the window blinds. Dave cracked the door open just enough to hand over a bloody 9mm handgun, claiming he was robbed and struck on the head. He spun a ridiculous tale. He claimed two men wearing medical masks and bright green shirts walked in carrying a box of refrigerant, demanded his money, knocked him unconscious, and shot his partner. Dave is a coward. He is the type of predator who lacks the stomach for his own violence, preferring to outsource his dirty work to incompetent thugs. But liars always forget the details. My. Dave told the police that the robbers took all the money from his pockets. Yet, when an officer patted him down, he found over $1,000 in cash sitting right there in the left pocket of Dave. Dave quickly changed his story, saying they only took the money from his right pocket. You have to be kidding me. That is the kind of stupid mistake that arrogant criminals make because they think they are smarter than the police. When investigators finally looked at the surveillance footage, the truth began to reveal itself. Slowly but surely, the cameras showed Dave peeking out the front door blinds right before the killers arrived. Who does that unless they're looking for their hired help to show up? He was waiting for the executioners he had summoned to end the life of a man who trusted him. Two men entered. They used an empty cardboard box with a hidden compartment to conceal their weapon. They wore gloves. This was not a random robbery. This was a targeted, orchestrated assassination. The cameras captured Nicholas running for his life toward the lobby before he was shot once in the back of the head. Execution style. He fell to the floor, dead. The sheer terror Nicholas must have felt in those final moments is a horror no one should ever endure. And what did Dave do? Dave claimed he heard nothing, saw nothing, and was unconscious. Yet the cameras caught the voice of Dave calling for help immediately after the gunshot, off camera. It is an insult to the intelligence of any seasoned investigator. The suspects fled in an old two-tone red and silver pickup truck. 2 minutes later, one of these masterminds decided to stop for gas at a local station. He walked right up to the counter, taking off his mask, and looked directly into a security camera to pay $10 in cash. His face is perfectly clear, yet he has never been identified. Meanwhile, Dave wasted no time. Just 5 days after his partner was slaughtered, Dave began harassing the grieving widow to sign the insurance documents. When she refused, someone mysteriously forged her signature on the claim forms. Alicia fought back legally, eventually settling out of court 4 years later in 2024. But the business folded within 9 months, and Dave simply walked away with a client list to start a new company from his own home. And if that is not enough to make your blood boil, you dig a little deeper into the past of Dave and discover that his own wife, Laura, died under mysterious circumstances 7 years prior to this incident. A coincidence? I do not believe in coincidences. I believe in patterns of behavior. Dave Sweetman is a man who thinks he can manipulate the system, twisting the truth while leaving a trail of devastation in his wake. The local police department has shuffled this case from detective to detective, offering excuses instead of handcuffs. They have redacted hundreds of pages of documents and hidden behind bureaucratic red tape. It is an absolute failure of justice for Nicholas Cordova, a decent man whose only crime was trusting a snake. The perpetrators are still walking the streets, breathing free air, while a widow and her children are left to carry the agonizing weight of their absence. But secrets have a way of clawing their way out of the dark. Someone knows who that man at the gas station is. Someone knows exactly how those pieces fit together. And until that day comes, the memory of Nicholas Cordova will continue to wait for the truth to be dragged out into the light. Humans are curious creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can possibly imagine, usually revolving around power, control, or a stack of green paper. My name is Joe Kenda, and I spent my entire career looking into the eyes of monsters. I tell you, the case of Laura Sweetman is one that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand at attention. She was a brilliant woman, a pediatric neurologist, someone who spent her life putting children back together, only to have her own life taken apart piece by a man who thrived in the shadows. From the outside, her marriage to David Sweetman looked like a California dream. But behind closed doors, it was a nightmare bathed in psychological warfare. He was a manipulator, a man who chipped away at her confidence until she felt like a ghost in her own home. When she finally uncovered his double life, an entire secret family with a preschool-age child, she found the courage to pack her bags. But men like David do not handle rejection well. They view their spouses not as partners, but as property. When she tried to leave, he physically restrained her, leading to an order of protection and a bitter divorce that threatened his financial stability. Fast forward 5 months. Laura is found dead in her bathtub, completely naked, foaming at the mouth, her body already locked in full rigor mortis. My. The Gilbert Police Department walks into that bathroom, looks around, and apparently decides a universe just had it out for her. You have to be kidding me. A woman in the middle of a contentious divorce with a man who has a history of aggression, and suddenly she just expires in a tub. The scene screamed of staging. A baby gate mysteriously moved, an unlocked back door, bruises covering her body, including fresh contusions on her head. Yet, the medical examiner, a man whose own professional past is so disgraced it borders on the absurd, signs off on an undetermined cause of death. He claims she might have had a heart attack, even though her actual heart showed zero physical evidence of prior trauma. He notes a prescription stimulant at the scene, but finds zero trace of it in her blood. The sheer incompetence is staggering. Then we have the men in her life. Will, the personal trainer who admits to being at her house the very night she died, deletes his text messages, and is seemingly allowed to just walk away without providing a solid alibi or timeline. David, who immediately starts sobbing uncontrollably before detectives even tell him his wife is dead, claims he had his 3 children all weekend, but is never pressed on his movements. We have a neighbor who reports a suspicious white vehicle parked in her driveway weeks prior, an observation completely ignored by investigators. Criminals make mistakes. They leave a trail of breadcrumbs. But if the detectives refuse to look down at the floor, the monster walks free. The psychology here is textbook. The perpetrator wanted her silenced, perhaps to stop the financial bleeding of a divorce or to maintain control over the children, executing the act with a cold, calculated precision that mimics an accident or a medical episode. Drowning leaves little evidence if you know what you are doing, and foaming at the mouth is a classic physiological response to a desperate struggle for oxygen beneath the waterline. Laura was a victim of a system that failed her at every single level, from the patrol officers who dismissed her neighbor tip to the medical examiner office that employed individuals with criminal convictions and ethical violations. She fought for her independence. She sought the warmth of new relationships, and she tried to break free from a toxic orbit. Her death was not an act of chance. It was a final, brutal statement of someone who believed they were smarter than the law. And looking at how this investigation was handled, they just might have been right. Humans are strange creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. A bruised ego, a fleeting moment of rejection, a perceived slight. Or sometimes, they kill because the darkest corners of their mind demand a sacrifice to quiet the voices of their own inadequacy. My name is Joe Kenda. I have spent my entire life hunting people who think they can play God. Let me tell you a secret about monsters. They always make a mistake, every single time. Today, we are opening the files on a nightmare that has haunted a quiet corner of Wisconsin since the summer of 1969. The story of Stephanie Casper. She was just a girl, merely days away from celebrating her 18th birthday. A young woman standing squarely on the threshold of her life, eager for independence, working hard at a local restaurant in downtown Milwaukee. She had a good heart. She was the kind of girl who looked out for the younger neighborhood kids, making sure nobody felt left out in a world that can often be exceedingly cruel. But like everyone who breathes, Stephanie had a secret. She was in love. Her boyfriend, John, was a 22-year-old serviceman who had just returned from serving his country. He was black, and she was white. In 1969, the world was a narrow-minded place, and the fear of her parents finding out kept her sneaking around, spending nights away from home. That innocent desire to keep her romance hidden created a tragic vulnerability. And predators, I tell you, have a sixth sense for vulnerability. It was the early morning hours of Monday, and Stephanie was angry. Her boyfriend had fallen asleep and failed to pick her up after his shift ended at past midnight. There is nothing quite like the righteous indignation of a teenager. She walked out the front doors of that restaurant, her brown leather purse slung over her shoulder, stepping alone into the cool night air. What was she thinking? Probably just about getting home, about the argument she was going to have with John the next day. She had absolutely no idea that she was walking into a trap. Let us examine the mind of the coward waiting in the dark. This is not a crime of sudden, uncontrollable passion. This is a crime of cold calculation. He sees a young, angry woman walking alone, and his twisted psychology registers opportunity. He does not see a human being with hopes and dreams. He sees an object. Perhaps he offers her a ride, disguised as a kind stranger or a familiar face, offering to show her an apartment for rent. She steps into his vehicle, and in that agonizing moment, her fate is sealed. He wants control. He wants complete dominance to mask the pathetic weakness of his true self. He strips away her future just to satisfy a temporary sickness in his soul. On a drizzly Wednesday afternoon, the 9th of July, with the temperature sitting in the low 70s, a 10-year-old boy was exploring the muddy banks of the Root River near an old condemned steel bridge. He saw a lump on the shore. He crept closer. It was a human foot. My. You have to be kidding me. A child out looking for fish finds the discarded pieces of a human life. We arrive at the scene. It is a butcher shop. Her torso and her left leg are completely gone. The remaining parts of her are scattered in piles along the mud. Wrapped in the local newspaper, dated the 24th of June, we find burned matchsticks, cigarette butts, and an old military-style jacket stripped of its patches, caked in heavy mud. When the pathologist examines her, the truth becomes even colder. 2 precise puncture wounds under her chin. A massive, deliberate cut across the back of her neck, severing an artery. But the dismemberment, that happened after she was dead. The cuts at the joints were surgical. Methodical. This was not the chaotic frenzy of a panic killer trying to hide his sin. This was the work of a man who had supreme patience, complete privacy, and plenty of time. He carved her apart not just to hide her identity or to make her easy to transport, but to fulfill a grotesque fantasy of ultimate possession. Over the next few days, he sheds her belongings like a snake shedding its dead skin. Her gold purse, her social security card, and ripped photographs are found tossed along a rural road in Franklin, 6 miles away from the river. And weeks later, the rest of her bones, her pelvis, her rib cage, are found in a weather-beaten cardboard box near a farmhouse 25 miles from the restaurant. The killer was completely comfortable driving these quiet back roads with a butchered girl in his possession. He thought he was a genius. They always do. But let me tell you about the liars we looked at. The rumors flew, of course. Some pointed at her grieving father, simply because he made a morbid, defensive joke to detectives when they cornered him. Despicable timing, but a grieving mind handles trauma in bizarre ways. He is not our guy. We look closer to her routine. We look at the restaurant. A den of late-night drama, heavy drinking, and men who knew her schedule perfectly. We look at a suspicious manager who volunteers unprompted that a psychic predicted the initials of the killer, which coincidentally matched his own. Nonsense. Then we look at Michael, a 20-year-old cook. He claims he saw her leave out the back door, completely contrary to what every other witness stated. He suddenly quits his job right after she vanishes, claiming he has a pre-planned vacation to Hawaii. 19 years later, his own sister contacts the authorities. She paints a horrific picture of a house built on terrible secrets and domestic abuse. She claims Michael was a monster behind closed doors, a man whose mother lied to the authorities to protect him. My, the family dynamics of a killer are always a tragedy of silent enabling. And the employment records show Michael was not even scheduled to work that night. He deliberately injected himself into the police narrative. He made himself a witness to control the story. It is a classic move of an arrogant sociopath who cannot resist being close to the fire he started. But is he our fandom? The biological material recovered from pubic hairs found on a dirty towel near her bones tells a very different story. The microscopic evidence, tested decades later using advanced genetic profiling, absolutely excludes Michael. It excludes a suspicious manager. It excludes his brother. It even excludes a horrifying local predator named Wilbert, a man who terrorized his own children by claiming he was the real killer. A man so evil his shadow likely bruised the ground he walked on. The science leaves us staring into the absolute void, looking at an unknown profile, a ghost. But ghosts do not use sharp knives. Ghosts do not wrap bodies in newspaper. Men do. Cowardly men who lack the courage to face the world as equals. So they steal life from the innocent in the dark. We look to the horizon, to a known drifter out of Idaho who butchered women with the exact same surgical precision, wrapped them in the exact same manner, and discarded them by rivers. The methods match. The sheer madness matches. The pursuit continues. The wheels of justice turn incredibly slowly, but they grind exceedingly fine. Stephanie Casper was a bright, beautiful light extinguished by a coward hiding in the shadows. The man who did this went on living, eating, and breathing, while her family suffered an unyielding agony that cascaded through multiple generations. But mark my words, secrets have a shelf life. The biological markers he left behind are ticking clocks. He thought he got away with it. He thought he was significantly smarter than the entire justice system. He was wrong. The truth is incredibly patient. It waits quietly in the cardboard evidence boxes. It waits patiently in the genetic sequences. We will find him. And when we finally sit across from him in that small, cold room, he will realize that all is twisted. Arrogant cleverness was absolutely nothing more than a delayed confession. Human beings are peculiar creatures. They will destroy the ones they claim to love for the most ridiculous reasons you can conjure in. Your mind, greed, pride, or just a simple, cowardly desire to walk away without carrying the baggage of the mess they made. Welcome to Taos, New Mexico, a place of beautiful mountains and ugly secrets. We are looking at the case of Melissa Casillas, a hard-working administrative assistant at a national laboratory, a mother who loved her 18-year-old daughter, Sierra, more than life itself. But Melissa was drowning. Her finances were a catastrophic failure. Overdrawn checking accounts, maxed out credit lines, wage garnishments, a suspended security clearance at her job because of her massive debt. The walls of her life were closing in fast. I tell you, desperation is a heavy coat to wear, and Melissa was wearing it every single day. But desperation alone does not make a woman vanish into thin air. On the morning of June 26, 2025, Melissa drives her husband Mark to work at the laboratory. They leave early. Mark claims they argued during the drive over her using an electronic cigarette, a trivial excuse for a fight. Then Melissa does something completely out of character. She drives the 1 hour and 15 minutes back home. She tells her daughter she forgot her security badge and will just work remotely. But Mark later tells investigators he personally saw her hand her badge to the guard that very morning. A contradiction right out of the gate. Liars always struggle to keep their scripts aligned. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Melissa visits the coffee shop where her daughter works. She brings her a sandwich. She cashes a check. She walks back to her vehicle. She texts her daughter at 1:33 in the afternoon, telling her to let Mark know he needs to find his own ride home. Then silence. When the daughter returns home around 3:30, the house is locked. The white family vehicle is in the driveway. Melissa is gone. On the kitchen table sit her purse, her wallet, her keys, and her necklace. In the office, the daughter finds something chilling. Both cellular phones belonging to Melissa are sitting there, displaying the welcome screen. They have been factory reset, wiped completely clean. The older phone was erased at 8:02 in the morning. The newer phone was wiped at 1:38 in the afternoon. Her cloud storage account has been permanently deleted. You have to be kidding me. You do not systematically erase your digital existence to go on a casual afternoon stroll. That is the behavior of someone meticulously executing a disappearing act, or someone being forced to erase their footprint by a predator who understands exactly how technology works. Enter Mark Casillas, the grieving husband, or so you would expect. When the extended family arrives to help search, Mark is not frantic. He is angry. He immediately begins tearing down the character of his wife. He tells the family she destroyed their finances. He tells them to look for her elsewhere. Mark has an alibi, confirmed by a co-worker who drove him home. He was physically at the laboratory. But an alibi only proves where your body was. It does not prove where your mind was, or what strings you might have been pulling from a distance. Investigators search the home. They find hunting boots belonging to Mark on the bedroom floor next to a fish tank. The mud on them looks fresh. Right next to those boots is a single dry drop of blood. Mark says he has not worn them in ages, pointing to a spider web inside the boot as proof. But investigators look inside and see absolutely no web. He claims the blood might be from processing hunted game or from a dog. He becomes agitated during questioning and stops talking. He is arrogant, dismissing leads and shutting down sightings. When a childhood friend named Lloyd calls the police to report seeing Melissa walking down Highway 518 in a white sweater, Mark tells the police to ignore it. He says she was not wearing white, and she does not walk with a limp. And what do the police do? They listen to him. They drop the lead. I tell you, trusting a husband to direct the investigation for his own missing wife is like trusting a wolf to guard your sheep. It is pure negligence. Mark changes his theories like a man changes his shirts. One moment, he suggests she walked away from her debts. The next moment, he suggests she ran off with a contractor. He even suggests she disappeared so he could declare her legally dead and collect life insurance for their daughter. A ridiculous theory, especially since her life insurance policy expired years ago. 3 days after she vanished, Mark changed the locks on the house. Why change the locks if you think your wife just walked away to clear her head? You change the locks because you know she is never coming back. Or because you want to ensure the narrative remains firmly in your control. Days later, Mark suddenly takes an interest in the highway sighting. He drives out there, retraces the steps, and miraculously finds a surveillance video from a private residence. The timestamp is 2:18 in the afternoon. The video shows Melissa, alive, walking purposefully down the highway wearing a small backpack. Mark presents this as absolute proof of his innocence, proof that she abandoned her family. But let us examine the psychology of a mother. A dedicated mother does not abandon her teenage daughter who recently survived a traumatic vehicle collision. A mother who is a cancer survivor does not leave her vital 90-day supply of thyroid medication behind. A mother does not buy a sandwich for her child at 1 o'clock and then vanish into the wind 40. 5 minutes later, without a single note of explanation. To add to this circus of distractions, the police receive a report about a local man named Rick Valerio. a man who rides a horse around town and drives a blue truck, the exact type of truck spotted lurking near Melissa on the highway. Rick tells a tourist he found a decapitated body in the mountains while searching for his missing cousin. The police finally interview him a month later. They speak to him through a metal gate. He denies it all, and the police simply walk away, assuming he made it up for attention. We also have a mysterious woman from Colorado who supposedly shows up at the workplace of the daughter to hand her a $50 graduation gift, claiming to have psychic abilities and stating that Melissa is fine. When police track this woman down, she completely denies ever visiting Taos, denies giving a gift, and denies knowing the family. Absolute nonsense. It is a parade of red herrings and lazy police work. Someone knows the exact truth, whether Melissa crumbled under the suffocating weight of her financial ruin and sought a permanent escape, or whether she was lured into a trap by a husband who recognized that she was worth more to him gone than present. You can wipe a cellular phone, you can delete a cloud storage account, and you can walk down a highway in broad daylight to create an optical illusion, but you cannot erase human nature. Criminals make mistakes because they believe they are smarter than everyone else in the room. The truth of Melissa Casillas is sitting right there in the New Mexico desert, buried under layers of financial lies, arrogant misdirection, and incomplete investigations. And until a proper detective decides to dig through that dirt, Melissa remains a ghost, crying out for the justice she so desperately deserves.